Hello, my name is Bianca Kutsia and this is my OPV 122 Badge Activity 1 project. For the first part, I created a model of the human brain by using assorted materials that was available in my home. I saw this project to be the perfect example of how teaching is partly art and partly science, because the entire idea of this project is to use unique and creative forms of art to represent the scientific answer to why and how humans function, also known as the brain. And in the spirit of being creative, I made a model of the right hemisphere of the brain. You might be finding it difficult to see the pattern or even what I tried to make with this model. Well, that was sort of the point. This part of the model was made from white wool and is glued to a piece of cardboard. The scales is not what I intended to depict in the first place, but I decided to use it to my favor. The chaos you see in front of you is what I initially thought when I saw the brain. How can this squishy piece of meat control how I think, feel, and move? And that's where the science of it all comes in. Everything we know today was first confusing and unknown, but by diving deeper into it and trying to understand how it works and finding the science in everything, we now know how everything works. This colorful inside of the right hemisphere was made by demolishing a Discem magazine, paper mache concept to be exact, and the golden strips are used to connect the labels to the picture. I chose this medium and range of colors to represent the creativeness of the right hemisphere. As seen by my professional labeling, the brain has different parts that is each responsible for something. First, we have the brainstem that connects the brain to the rest of the spinal cord. Then we have the hindbrain that includes the cerebellum, which is critical in coordination of movement and sense of balance. The medulla, weird word, that controls the unconscious vital functions like breathing, and also the pons that relays sensory information between the cerebellum and the cerebral cortex. Next we have the pituitary glands, which is a pea-sized body attached to the base of the brain that is important in controlling growth, development, and the functioning of other endocrine glands. Next we have the midbrain. This integrates sensory processes. In other words, it relays information between the visual and auditory system. The ventricles are structures that produce cerebrospinal fluid and transport it around the cranial cavity. Next we have the forebrain, which is seen as the largest and most complex part of the brain. This includes the thalamus, which is a relay station where all sensory information passes through. Next, we have the hypothalamus, which is very important in the regulation of basic biological needs related to survival, including fighting, fleeing, feeding, and mating. Then we have the limbic lobe, which is involved in regulation of emotion, memory, and motivation. And lastly, the cerebrum, which is responsible for the most complex mental activities, such as learning, remembering, and thinking. As I have mentioned before, the brain is divided into a left and right hemisphere. The hemispheres are connected by a long fissure known as the corpus callosum. The cerebral hemisphere also includes the occipital lobe, where most visual signals are sent and visual processes begins. The parietal lobe that registers and the sense of touch, and the frontal lobe that controls movements and muscles. And that completes the tour of my model of the brain. Now that I'm reflecting on my experience of making this model, There are three aspects that stands out to me of what I have learned. First, I am very bad at art projects. The project before me is not at all what I had initially envisioned. It is not necessarily a bad thing, but it irritates me to my core, for I am someone who enjoys to work according to a plan. Secondly, what I found interesting is a comment my brother made, which I then later confirmed by doing my own research, is that your brain itself can't actually feel pain, which I thought was quite ironic. The third thing that I learned that I stood out to me was biology is a lot more interesting if you don't see it as just another subject, but as the beauty of nature that it truly is, and it makes me regret not including it in my studies. Now, two questions related to the brand that stood out for me. Firstly was, am I a left or a right brain person? For I enjoy being creative, but on the other side, I don't like not following a set out plan. The second question was, what is considered to be the most important part of the brain? I asked this question to members of my family and realized that it might be more of a subjective answer. For me, being able to move is the most important part, but to my brother, it is being able to think. And again, I decided to leave the question to be debated another day. And finally, one aspect I found interesting in terms of training my own brain is that for me personally, repetition is key. I cannot watch a movie only once and remember everything that happens, let alone studying for a biology test. And that concludes my project presentation. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.